SilkCentral Test Manager, setting up the source control profile to run SilkTest scripts in an evaluation. In this recording, we'll take a look at how you can set up the integration between SilkTest and SilkCentral for an evaluation. We'll look at how you can share the SilkTest directory, how to set up the source control profile directly in SilkCentral, and how to create a test container and add SilkTest assets into SilkCentral. Let's start by sharing the SilkTest directory. The first step is to make sure that the location where your SilkTest assets are stored is actually shared and available to SilkCentral. This recording is going through the steps you'd go through for a standard evaluation where you're storing the SilkTest assets right on your desktop. For a production environment, we recommend as a best practice that those assets actually be stored in a source control system. So the first thing you need to do is browse to the location where your SilkTest scripts live. On my desktop, they're stored in C, Program Files, Borland, SilkTest. And I'm going to come down to the projects file inside of SilkTest and share that directly. Right-click to choose Sharing, and on the Sharing tab, go to Share this folder and give it a name, and I'm going to keep the default of Projects. I'll say Apply and OK. Now that we've shared the SilkTest directory, the next step is to set up a source control profile in SilkCentral Test Manager. Once inside your project, you'll come to the Settings tab on the top Workflow toolbar. Once inside of Settings, go to the far right where you'll find the Source Control tab. You'll probably have one profile already set up in here called Working. You can come in and create another one by choosing New Profile. Here you'll give this profile a name. In this case, I'm going to call this my SilkTest profile. And you'll choose which source control system you're going to be connecting to. So as I mentioned before, if this is a production environment, you want to have your SilkTest assets in a source control system, and we support a wide variety of those from SilkCentral. For this example and for evaluations, I recommend using UNC or VFS, Virtual File Share. In this example, I'll choose UNC, and I'll get the options accordingly. So the first thing you do is you put in the path. Now, if you're on an operating system that allows a web share, it'll be // your machine name / and the share name. And if you remember when I shared my SilkTest directory, the share name was projects. If you happen to be on an operating system that doesn't allow web sharing, your slashes will be the other direction. You can also specify a working directory, and in this case, I will just give it C:\temp and say OK. And you'll see that you have a new profile set up in SilkCentral. So at this point, we've shared our SilkTest directory, so SilkCentral can access those files. We've set up the source control profile in SilkCentral so that it knows where to find the SilkTest projects. Now the third step is to actually create a test container in our test plan and point to some of those SilkTest assets that we'd like to execute from SilkCentral. To do this, you'll come to your test plan view in SilkCentral. And now you should see a tree view on the left with your project and some high-level containers underneath. Each container can point to a separate source control profile and root node and have some additional properties as well. So let's create a new test container. Do this by right-clicking on the project level node, choose New Test Container, and for this demonstration we'll call it our SilkTest scripts. You'll fill in pertinent information like a description, the product, and here is where you'll choose your source control profile. And so as you can see, it's got the one that we just created, SilkTest, as well as the existing one, which was called Working. There's also a space for a root node, and I definitely recommend that you use this. In this example, I shared out the entire SilkTest projects folder, which means every SilkTest project I have is included in this SilkTest profile. In SilkCentral, when you push tests out to run on different execution servers, by default, it will push everything from the root node to those execution servers, so you'll have all the assets needed to run your tests. For this particular project in SilkCentral and for this container, I'm only going to be working on one SilkTest project. By specifying this root node, this one particular project or sub-project, I'll be able to move a lot less data to those remote machines and take less time. So I'm going to choose to browse and select my root node. I'll choose the specific project that I'm working on and say OK. At this point, you should see your new container, our SilkTest scripts, in your project tree. And there should be no tests under it yet. So at this point, let's go ahead and create a few new tests. We'll choose New Child Test Definition. And you can give it a description. Then at the bottom, you would choose what test type it is. So in this case, we're going to use a SilkTest script, and we'll choose Next. And now we can browse and see all the tests we have available. Now, based on the root node I specified, it shows me everything in that particular folder, not everything in all of the project folders in SilkTest. So here I can choose the test I want to run and say OK. And then I can specify the particular test case I'd like and any specific settings I have. I'll choose Finish. And now you can see our new Silk script test definition shows up in our new container. At this point, you can do a try run right from here by right-clicking and choosing to try run your test definition. Or you can go on and set all the properties, attributes, assigned requirements, and so on related to this test and get it ready for an execution. This has been SilkCentral Test Manager, setting up the SourceControl profile to run SilkTest scripts. Thank you.